Greetings, welcome, salutations! Last time I covered 5 good things in the new Alpha 17 build that Madmole showed off in his Let's Play Day 1. To contrast this, here are 5 less than good things, or also known as things I consider a bit of a concern. Now, while saying this, let's also keep in mind that it is early experimental, actually it's a non-released experimental build, so some things would be bugs, some things are simply unfinished features. But some things are probably due to design changes or how the team works that I find perhaps a bit unfortunate or giving some concern based on the gameplay. As well, some of these might simply be due to lack of information, so nothing is really set in stone. If you agree with these things, drop me a like. If you disagree, tell me in the comment section below and tell me what things you don't like about it. As always, make sure you subscribe if you enjoyed the video and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified of the videos. Otherwise, you might miss some of the early Alpha 17 videos that I'll be putting out and hopefully within the next week or two. So firstly, let's talk about there being no loot from corpses. While this is not entirely true, Madmole did mention that if there is any loot, it's going to drop in a sort of a loot bag and not in the corpse itself. So you don't have 20, 30, 40, 50 or hundreds of corpses that you have to go through and search one by one in order to find the loot. So that's pretty good. Now, unfortunately, in the playthrough that Madmole did, there seemed to be no loot whatsoever. So that is a bit of a concern. He did mention that it's going to be more scarce because, he wants people to go around and search all the buildings and do looting that way. But I find that it's a little bit troubling because it creates a little bit of an artificial scarcity of items. Sure, you can go and loot the nearby town, but let's say you're playing 8 players on a map, which by the way is going to be smaller than Alpha 16. Pretty soon your nearby town is going to be looted, and because you get no loot from zombies, you go to the next town, and the next, and it's not going to take that long before all the towns have been looted. But hey, you say, you can respawn the loot in the loot containers. You can have them respawn every 3 days, 7 days, and 10 days, or whatever you want to, and this is true. However, magically respawning loot containers is really a weird solution to a world turning empty of things. I'd much rather have a balanced zombie loot to make it worthwhile killing them.
So, another thing we've done, you're like, where'd the loot go? You just lost the loot. No, I didn't lose the loot. Zombies most likely don't have loot most of the time now. And this is going to save you guys. Thought we'd fix that. So yeah, I don't have to loot him now, but because basically if they die, they're going to drop like a satchel or something that'll have some loot in it. So we don't have the performance wasted on, floor piles everywhere after a horde night. You'll just see some bags with some stuff in it. So I think that's going to be good for performance, and it's going to save you guys more. And it's like, who really needs, all the clutter that the zombies were dropping anyway? It's just garbage filling up your inventory, which, as you can see, we still have plenty of that. So
the second item is related to the looting. Previously, you would knock down or kill a zombie and you would know that it's dead because you get a loot indication when you hover over him. As it is right now, you saw that in the video a few times, Madmole knocks down a zombie or he kills it, but he can't tell. Unless you heard the death rattle, you don't know whether it's really dead or whether it's going to get up again. And it's stunned, it's not knocked out, it's not unconscious. So what I think they need to do is add some kind of twitching, some kind of movement, so that you know that it's still animated, still alive, but that it's stunned. Right now you simply can't tell, and I find that you shouldn't have to wait 5-10 seconds to see if the zombie is going to get up. If you're in a fight, you want to hit zombies that are knocked down or stunned because it gives you additional damage. But right now you might end up just bashing corpses for no reason, and if you have multiple enemies, that's just wasting your time. So the third thing is, while we're still talking about the melee, I feel that it's a little bit clumsy. Maybe it's the poor hitboxes, maybe it's the poor weapon hit detection, but it doesn't feel meaty, it doesn't feel real. It feels cumbersome, it feels slow, and the character hits somewhere in front of the zombie, which isn't quite natural. It's sort of like, it looks like the animation is not hitting in the correct place. So while I mentioned I like the new power attacks, I think that this really needs some tweaking. Maybe they even need to redo the animations that it feels to be a satisfying, natural melee. I mean, there are other games where this is just more satisfying. When I saw Madmole play this previously, I had a concern. When I saw this in the day one Let's Play, it just doesn't feel right. It feels weird. And, maybe it's better when you're playing versus watching, but it just doesn't look very satisfying. And it doesn't look like you're hitting the zombie, even though the animation says you do, or vice versa. It looks like you should be hitting the zombie, but you miss. And that's not really a good way of designing it. On the fourth point, the world still feels empty. While there are sleepers aplenty in the POIs, and there are some sleeping zombies as well next to abandoned cars and other items of interest, walking around the world it still seems eerily quiet. Even around the POIs, there seems to be next to no zombies, just a few here and there, until you wake the sleepers. This was an issue even with Alpha 16, with the move of the system to have sleepers instead of having roaming zombies. So a single zombie here and there, and that you get no loot from, it just seems to be just too little. And if it's as in Alpha 16, there also is no longer any game server setting such that increasing the zombie spawns to 150 or 200%. I think that's a big pity. This is already a problem in Alpha 16, where you would be walking around the world and there's just no zombies there. You really need a way to have more zombies roaming around. Yes, maybe there's going to be some impact on performance, but again, if you have a good server, if you have a good computer, we should be able to tweak that and decide that for ourselves, because it just feels too empty. You shouldn't have to just run into zombies when they're hordes. You should be able to run across them when you're walking around the town or walking around in the wilderness. The last item I want to cover is that, well, and it probably is a pretty big and controversial item. There seems to have been an over-focus on graphics, with gameplay and new features having taken a backseat and potentially steps backward. Overall, while I do like a lot of the graphical improvements, you have the new blocks, textures, you have the HD textures, the look and feel of the world is much nicer with the POIs being redone. They have this kind of dungeon feel that you explore. A lot of things have improved visually. But there's also a number of gameplay changes, such as the looting, melee, stamina and health bar. And these are more tweaks, which people might argue that, yes, it could be better, it could be worse, but it's not a super significant change. It's more of a tweak. And there's a huge risk that it's been seen as not enough being added over a year of development. And it's been more than a year at this time, and not having enough new content, I think that's a pity. I mean, if we look into Alpha 16, you had a lot of new things. You have the whole electricity system, which is huge as far as gameplay value. All of a sudden, your base is going to have not just spikes as normal defenses or maybe mines. You're going to have auto turrets, you're going to have shotgun turrets, your electric fences, all the electricity items with tripwires and trigger plates and motion sensors. All those things just make the gameplay richer and extensive. But we haven't seen much of that in Alpha 17 at all. Yes, there might be the Jeep and the gyrocopter, but again, these are incremental items and not really super big when it comes to the gameplay. And I think that's a bit of a concern, because it might mean that we have an Alpha 17 that plays better than Alpha 16, but that doesn't give us the year of extra value that we have been waiting for. And unfortunately, that means that for new players, they'll come into the game and go like, wow, this is nice, this is really good. But it's a problem when players have been waiting a year and feel that they don't get enough content. I mean, there are a lot of early access games out there that puts out a lot more content, and now that can be debatable. But if you're waiting for a year and there's not enough content to really keep you engaged and feel that there's something really new and interesting, you'll probably pick up another game. So that's good for new players maybe, but for the community at large who've been around for a longer time, it does feel like it's just very thin on the content. So what do you think? They're still working on the version, they're bug fixing, they're tweaking, they're rebalancing, they're trying to make things work. But I'm hoping that the next few videos that Madmole puts out really shows what Alpha 17 is all about. Day 1 didn't quite bring that out. I'll catch you next time.
Special thanks to the great patrons supporting the channel. If you would like to join the vetted community and support these videos, do follow the Patreon link.